Early morning mist shrouded the hills as the old man stepped gently into the dim room. A young girl lay unconscious, her fever raging since the night before. "She still hasn't woken up," he murmured with concern, placing a hand on her burning forehead. Pale sunlight filtered through the cracks in the window, heralding another long day of worry and waiting. "Come on, sweetheart, try to eat a little porridge," the elderly woman coaxed gently, lifting the girl's head. Each spoonful took effort, a battle between weakness and survival. The girl stirred slightly, moaned, then drifted back into silence. "She seems a bit better today," the woman said softly, relieved. "At least she's eating a little." No one knew who the girl was. The old man had found her at the foot of the hill, collapsed and unconscious, with no ID, no belongings, only a bruise on the back of her head and a body trembling with fever. "Maybe she fell. It was cold that night, thank God I found her in time," he added, voice heavy with fear for what could have been. Several days passed. She remained bedridden, burning up at times, shivering at others. The couple took turns watching over her, boiling herbs, feeding her porridge, praying she would pull through. Then one morning, while the grandmother was in the kitchen, a cry rang out. "Grandma! She's awake!" The old man rushed in, heart pounding. Where am I?" the girl whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. "You're safe, child," the woman said, holding her hand. "This is our home. My husband found you unconscious in the forest and brought you here. You just need to rest now." The girl looked around, dazed. I don't remember anything. Not even who I am." "That's okay," the grandmother reassured her. "You're not alone anymore. We'll take care of you. Just focus on getting better." They called her little one for a while, but it didn't feel right. One evening as she slept, the old man looked at his wife and said, "We should give her a name." She nodded. "Yes. She deserves more than just being the girl." "I've thought of one," he continued. "To Kentucky. It means someone born from a fateful accident, like a turning point in life. Our family name is Lien, so Lien to Kentucky. What do you think?" That night, when the girl woke again, the old woman gently told her, "From now on, we'll call you Lien to Kentucky. That name is yours, and this home is yours too, if you want it." The girl's eyes welled up. "Thank you. I'll get better. I promise." From that moment, a small light began to shine in the humble home on the hill. Tukai slowly regained strength. She learned to sit up, take steps, eat on her own. The grandmother fed her with love. The grandfather went to the village market each morning, returning with herbs said to heal the liver, strengthen bones, ease the mind. But peace is fleeting for those with too little. One afternoon, just as the medicine pot bubbled over the fire, harsh knocks rattled the wooden door. A group of angry men barged in. "Where is your son? He owes us money." The grandmother trembled. "He's been gone for years. We have nothing." "We don't care," the man barked. "If he's not here to pay, we'll take whatever's valuable." The grandfather stood between them. "Please, we only have a pig left. It's for food for the sick girl." "Then give us the pig." A struggle ensued. The old couple clung to their last possession, tears streaming down their cheeks. Tukai watched from the corner, powerless, her hands clenched in silent fury. They lost the pig that day. When the door slammed shut, silence filled the room, followed by quiet sobs. "They took it. It was all we had left for her," the grandmother whispered. Tukai, still weak, shuffled toward them and said, voice trembling, "Please don't cry. One day, I'll repay everything you've done for me. I swear I will." As days turned into weeks, the girl who once teetered between life and death had begun to reclaim the color in her cheeks. Though still frail, Tukai started walking around the yard, holding onto the wooden fence that creaked with each shift of her weight. The grandparents, who had never had a grandchild of their own, smiled more than they had in years. Each morning, the smell of warm porridge drifted through the small cottage, accompanied by the soothing rhythm of herbal tea boiling over firewood. The grandmother often hummed old lullabies while gently combing Tukai's hair. "You're healing well, my child," she would whisper. "But there's something about you. Those eyes. They've seen more than a girl your age should." Tukai looked down. "I don't remember what they've seen, but sometimes I dream of running away, from something or someone. And then I fall." The grandfather, sitting nearby sharpening a sickle, looked up. Perhaps the dreams are fragments of what you forgot. Sometimes the mind protects us by hiding pain. She nodded. But I want to remember. I need to know who I am. Not everything that's lost should be found, the old man said gently. But if the day comes, we'll help you find your way. One rainy afternoon, a traveling merchant stopped by the house. His horse-drawn cart was weighed down with spices and cloth from the neighboring province. Tukai helped bring him water while the old couple traded herbs for rice. The merchant glanced at her face, then leaned toward the grandfather and whispered, "You say she's from the hills?" "Yes," he replied. "Found her unconscious. No name. No family." "She looks familiar," the merchant murmured. "I've passed through a village 2 valleys over, and a man there. He's been searching for a lost daughter. Claims she vanished near the ridge. She fits the description." The grandmother's hand froze mid-stir. "What else do you know?" "Only rumors. That the man's rich. Powerful. But also cruel. Locals say the girl ran away to escape something. No one's seen her since." That night, the couple sat in silence, their bowls of porridge untouched. "If this man is her father," the grandmother began. The old man shook his head. "We don't know that. And if she truly ran, then what was she running from?" Meanwhile, Tukai lay in bed, unaware of the conversation outside. But deep in her chest, an unshakable unease began to grow. Dreams came more frequently now. Dreams of tall gates, loud voices, and a girl with blood on her dress. The next day, the merchant returned with a drawing. It was crude, sketched on worn parchment, but it was unmistakably her. Tukai's heart dropped. The lines around the eyes, the braid, even the slight tilt of the chin. It was her reflection staring back. "He's offering a reward for her return," the merchant said. "More gold than you'll ever need." The old man's hands curled into fists. "This girl isn't for sale." "I understand," the merchant said, bowing. "But be careful. Others may not be so kind. Word travels fast." That night, thunder roared through the valley. Tukai couldn't sleep. She stood at the threshold of the door, watching the storm swallow the horizon. The wind howled like the voice in her dreams. "I don't want to go back," she whispered to no one. Behind her, the grandmother wrapped a shawl over her shoulders. "Then don't. You're safe here." "But for how long?" Tukai asked. "What if he comes for me? Then we protect you." The next morning, strangers appeared at the edge of the forest. Men in dark clothing, riding horses that glistened with sweat. They asked questions in the market, showed the drawing, asked if anyone had seen a girl with frightened eyes and a missing memory. The villagers said nothing, but rumors spread like wildfire. Later that day, the old man returned home, his face grim. "They're close. I saw them with my own eyes. They're not just searching, they're hunting." "Then we have to hide her," the grandmother said. "No," Tukai interrupted, stepping forward. "No more hiding." "You're not ready," the old man warned. "You don't even remember." "I don't need to remember the pain to know I don't want it back." There was silence. Tukai took a breath. "If I must face the past, I will. But not alone. I want to know who I was. And I want to know why I was left to die." The old man stood slowly. "Then we begin tomorrow. At first light." The rain hadn't stopped for days. A cold mist hung over the village like a ghost refusing to leave. In the small thatched house tucked behind rows of bamboo and rice fields, Lai Tu-kai stirred quietly in the morning light. Her steps were steadier now, her voice less fragile, and the color had returned to her cheeks. Yet something inside her remained restless. Each night brought vivid dreams, shadows of a large red house, a man yelling, a door slammed shut, and blood. Sometimes she woke up sweating, her hands trembling, uncertain if it was real or imagined. "Dreams again?" the grandmother asked gently, placing a warm hand on Tu-kai's back. Tu-kai nodded. "They feel so real. But I don't know what they mean." The old man lit his pipe and sat down next to her. "Sometimes the mind tries to protect us from pain by locking away memories. But maybe it's time we help you find the key." "You mean try to remember?" "I mean, if you're ready, we'll go together. See if someone recognizes you. There's a road near the ridge. People pass through there often. Maybe they've seen you before." Tu-kai inhaled deeply. Fear mingled with hope in her chest. "Yes," she said. "Let's go." The journey took most of the morning. They walked past creaking trees and mossy stones, followed a stream that twisted through the valley like a silver ribbon. At every stop, farms, roadside vendors, rest shelters, they asked the same question. "Have you seen this girl?" Each time the answer was no, until they reached a weathered tea stall near the county bus station. An old woman selling rice cakes narrowed her eyes and said, "She looks like a girl I saw weeks ago, with a man in a long coat." They were heading toward the city. Tu-kai clenched her hands. "I want to go there," she whispered. That night, the rain finally stopped. The silence felt heavier than the downpour. Just as they finished dinner, a sharp knock echoed at the door. A man in a dark coat stood there, tall, neatly dressed, carrying a leather bag. "Good evening. I'm Dr. Tran. I've come from the city to search for a missing girl named Tu Kentucky. She disappeared weeks ago near a forest ridge. I believe she may be here." The grandparents exchanged glances, saying nothing. The man opened his bag and pulled out an old photograph. A smiling girl in a white dress, standing in a lavish garden. The resemblance was uncanny. I don't remember him," Tu-kai said, stepping closer. "But that girl, it could be me." "I'm here to take you home, child," the man said gently. "Your parents have been looking for you day and night. They're worried sick." The old man's eyes narrowed. "Then come back tomorrow. We'll need time to verify." The visitor smiled thinly. "Of course. I'll be at the inn near the village entrance." That night, Tu-kai couldn't sleep. She paced the wooden floor while the wind whispered outside. Her heart was loud, confused. In the kitchen, she overheard the grandparents speaking in hushed tones. "His eyes," the old man muttered. They weren't eyes of someone looking for a lost daughter. They were eyes of someone looking for something valuable. Exactly. No warmth, no tears, just calculation. If he's a doctor, why is he alone? No family, no paperwork except one photograph. We can't let him take her. Something's wrong. Tu-kai froze at the door. Her pulse raced. A crack in the dam of her mind gave way. A flash, she remembered a locked room. A scream. A man's hand grabbing her arm, dragging her down marble stairs. And then darkness. "I have to know," she whispered to herself. "I have to see him to know if that memory is real." Before dawn, she left. A note on the table read, "I must face him. I need to remember who I am." The rain returned as she reached the inn, but there was no Dr. Tran. The receptionist had never heard of such a man. Panic rose in her chest. Too late. A van screeched beside her. A gloved hand yanked her inside. The man's face was no longer friendly. His eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "You've caused quite the chase, little girl," he sneered. "But it ends now." Tu-kai screamed, kicked, fought back, but he held her down. Her fingers clutched the bracelet the grandmother had given her. A symbol of warmth, of safety. Tears streamed down her face. Meanwhile, the old man had awakened early, sensing something wrong. He found the note and wasted no time. The villagers were roused. Someone mentioned a black van speeding past the main road, heading toward the abandoned mountain pass. Without hesitation, a group of neighbors joined in. Riding motorbikes, they raced through mud and rain, tracing the vehicle's path. The forest grew denser. Time grew thin. At a sharp bend, the van lost control. It crashed into a shallow ravine. The driver, Dr. Tran or whoever he truly was, staggered out, blood trickling down his face. Tu-kai lay trapped inside, sobbing but alive. The villagers pulled her out. The man was seized, pinned down, and handed over to the police. He wasn't a doctor. His real name was Dung, wanted for human trafficking, posing as a medical professional to kidnap vulnerable girls and sell them. At the police station, Tu-kai learned the truth. She was not the daughter of any rich man. In fact, no one had come forward to claim her. There were no missing person reports matching her identity. The memories she'd held onto were fragments from a much darker past, of being sold, trafficked, and eventually escaping, only to fall unconscious in the forest. Her real name? Unknown. Her family? Gone. But her future? That she now had control over. She stood on the porch of the old house, looking out over the fields she had helped plant. Her voice was clear. I don't want to go back to where I came from. Whatever that was. It's not me anymore. She turned to the couple who had saved her life, loved her without knowing her name. I want to stay. I want to carry your name. I want to be Lai Tu-kai, not the girl from the red house, but the girl who found a new beginning here. The old woman embraced her, tears spilling over her cheeks. Then this is your home. And we are your family. For the first time in her life, Tu-kai felt something she had never truly known. Belonging. Even after the ordeal, the house remained silent for days. The laughter that once filled the early mornings now sat beneath cautious glances and guarded emotions. Tu-kai moved through the space slowly, not because her body still hurt, but because her spirit was processing what had just unraveled. She often sat on the wooden step overlooking the vegetable garden, listening to the cicadas, watching the steam rise from the teapot her grandmother brewed every afternoon. The taste of the herbs now brought comfort, but also a sense of distance, like a returning traveler unsure where they truly belonged. You don't have to be strong all the time, the grandfather said one evening, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. Even the mountains we've known all our lives erode under too much rain. Tu-kai didn't reply. Her thoughts were heavy not only with memory but with identity. She had chosen the name Lai Tu-kai, chosen to stay in the village, chosen love over blood, but still questions lingered. That night sleep came like fog, light, incomplete. And in her dream she was a child again. She stood in a garden filled with red orchids, vivid, overwhelming. A man's voice echoed nearby, not shouting but repeating something. Don't speak. Don't question. Be perfect. She turned in the dream. A face hovered just beyond clarity, half smile, half threat. Then she saw herself, older, blood on her hands, staring into a mirror that reflected nothing. She woke up gasping. Tu-kai! The grandmother rushed in with a lantern. I saw something. Or someone. I don't know. The old woman sat beside her. Your mind is trying to give shape to what it can't name. Tu-kai trembled. What if there's more? More memories? Worse ones? Then we face them, the woman said calmly. One breath at a time. One truth at a time. From that day on, Tu-kai began writing. She found an old notebook in a dusty corner of the house. Each morning before the sun rose too high, she would sit in the shade and write down everything she remembered. Not just facts, feelings, fragments, sensations. A yellow ribbon, a locked door, a white piano she was never allowed to play. Her handwriting was shaky at first, but page by page her voice returned. Not the voice of the frightened girl found near the ridge, but a new one, formed in the quiet of the countryside, shaped by kindness and resilience. The villagers, too, began to embrace her not just as the girl who had survived, but as someone they could rely on. She helped mend roofs. She gathered herbs. She taught two younger girls how to read using the very notebook she wrote in. Word spread of her strength. And then came the letter, delivered by a traveling merchant who passed through the village once a month. He handed it to her with a nod, curious but respectful. Spring crept slowly into the valley. The once barren trees began to stretch green fingers toward the sky, and mist lifted gently from the hills each morning like a secret unrolling itself. At the edge of the village, in a quiet house shaded by bamboo, Lai Tu-kai stood under the sun, drying herbs with the old woman who had become like a mother to her. "You're stronger now," the grandmother smiled, handing her a basket of dried roots. "Watching you work, my heart feels lighter." Tu-kai lowered her head, the corners of her mouth tugging into a quiet smile. "I'm not the girl who only knew how to cry anymore." That afternoon, as the grandfather repaired the broken trellis outside, the sound of an engine echoed down the dirt path. A man on a dusty motorbike pulled up, sweat on his brow, a calm steadiness in his stance. "Excuse me, sir," he called. "I'm Jack. The village had asked me to check the new wooden bridge by the rice fields," said a child nearly slipped through last week. The old man nodded, sizing him up. "Yes, that bridge has a weak joint. Good thing someone's come to fix it." "You a builder?" Jack scratched the back of his head. "Sort of. I studied civil engineering. Came back here to live quietly, take small jobs. City life's too loud for me." That evening, they invited him to stay for dinner. The meal was simple: braised fish, boiled greens, and sour soup with wild tamarind, but somehow it filled more than the belly. It filled a space in the air that no one had realized was empty. It was during that meal that something subtle began. Not quite a spark, but a warmth, between a girl with no memory of who she was, and a man quietly fixing broken things with his bare hands and silent eyes. Jack began visiting more often. He mended the roof, built shelves, replanted the vegetable beds. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words felt heavy with meaning. "I don't like crowds," he said once, hammering a loose nail into a doorframe. "People in the city, they never stop running." One morning, as Tu-kai brought him a bottle of cool tea, Jack looked at her curiously. "Your name, is it really Tu-kai?" She hesitated. "No, I don't know my real name. The grandparents gave me this one when they took me in." Jack smiled. "Then I suppose it's the best name you've ever had." Her cheeks flushed pink, and for the first time in a long time her heart skipped, not out of fear but something else. Something gentler. But the sun never stays forever. One rainy afternoon, the villagers gathered at the community hall to reinforce the old temple roof. Someone mentioned a girl who disappeared 2 years ago, vanished from a wealthy household with high walls and guards. She'd been living in a private facility and was rumored to have escaped. Jack's hammer froze midair. The description was too close. Long hair, sad eyes, a faint scar on the left cheek. "She looks a bit like Tu-kai, doesn't she?" he asked the village head quietly. "Maybe," the man said. "But that girl was adopted by a powerful man. They say she had issues, mental health. After she vanished, no one asked questions. No one dared." Jack said nothing more that day, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. Over the next week, Jack began to investigate discreetly. He visited a shelter in a neighboring province, offering to volunteer. An elderly security guard spoke in hushed tones. "There was a girl," he whispered, "kept locked in a private home. She escaped one night, bloodied and barefoot. But we never saw her again." The man who claimed to be her father was no father. When Jack returned to the village, he brought with him a photograph. It was faded, printed from an old database. He stood outside Tu-kai's house that night, hands trembling. "I need you to look at this," he said gently. "Is this you?" She stared at the image. The girl in the photo was gaunt, hollow-eyed, marked by pain, but unmistakably her. Her hands began to shake. "I remember the piano," she said quietly. "They never let me play it." She collapsed into sobs, not out of fear, but because at last the last puzzle piece had fallen into place. The next day, Jack, the grandparents, and Tu-kai visited the local police station. With help from a social worker and old medical records, her identity was confirmed. DNA matched files from a closed case in the capital. Her name, once forgotten, was documented again. But she didn't want it. "I don't want to be that girl," she said. "I don't want the name, the house, the nightmares. I want to stay here in this village as Lai Tu-kai, the name that was given to me with love." Jack stood beside her. "Then let me help you build a new bridge. Not one made of wood, but one made of trust." and she took his hand, not because she needed saving, but because this time she was choosing her future on her own. The early summer rains had begun, sudden and sweeping, soaking the rice paddies and muddying the footpaths that wound through the quiet village. In the little kitchen, the scent of lotus seed porridge floated through the air as Grandma Lai prepared dinner with steady hands. Everything looked the same, but something in the air between the people had shifted. Lai Tu-kai and Jack no longer needed many words. A glance was enough. Since her identity had been revealed and she had chosen to stay, things had been calm. Jack had poured his energy into rebuilding the suspension bridge near the riverbank. Tu-kai had set up a small reading corner for the village children, teaching them how to write their names. "I never imagined I'd live a life like this," Tu-kai said one afternoon as they picked beans together in the garden. "You deserve it," Jack replied. "Maybe even more than this." But the peace, as always, didn't last. She arrived like a gust of wind cutting across still water. Heels clicking, makeup flawless, expression unreadable. A stranger in the village, dressed like she belonged in a high-rise boardroom, not a dirt path. "I'm looking for Lai Tu-kai," she said aloud, standing at the gate of the Lai household. Or should I say, Tu-san? Everyone froze. Tu-kai stepped out, confusion flashing in her eyes. "Who are you?" "I'm your sister," the woman said with a chilling smile. "And I've been looking for you for 3 years. Jack stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between them. "What do you want?" "I've come to take her back. She's still legally under my father's guardianship, and he's dying. He wants to see her one last time. You understand what will happen if she refuses, don't you?" That night, the air was dry but bitter. The wind rattled the shutters. Tu-kai sat curled up by the door, arms wrapped around her knees. Jack placed a blanket over her shoulders. "I don't know if she's really my sister," Tu-kai whispered. "But the name, Tu-san, it hurts my head. I've heard it in dreams." "You don't owe them anything," Jack said gently. "If they're using threats, they've already lost the right to find you. But if the man she calls my father is truly dying, and he just wants to see me one last time, then go if your heart leads you, not because you're afraid." The next morning the woman returned, this time with a lawyer and a car. She carried paperwork stamped and certified, showing that Tu-kai, formerly Tu-san, was still legally listed under guardianship by a businessman who had once adopted children from impoverished provinces. The entire village gathered. The village head and elders looked on warily. Jack stood firm, holding Tu-kai's hand. "You don't have to go," the lawyer said. "But if you want your name cleared, you'll need to sign the guardianship waiver." In the city, the hospitals smelled like antiseptic and wilted orchids. Tu-kai stepped into the private room with trembling hands. The man in the bed was frail, his chest rising shallowly beneath the crisp white sheet. His eyes fluttered open at her presence. He didn't speak, but slowly he reached for a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a wrinkled paper sketched by hand. "Tu-san, my daughter. Forgive me." That was all. Tu-kai wept, not from pain but from release. On the way back to the village, silence stretched between her and Jack. He didn't ask. She didn't speak, until they were near the bridge he had rebuilt. "I don't want to go back," she said finally. "He's gone now. And his words, they're enough. I forgive him. Not for him, but so I can live." Jack nodded. "Then let's keep building. One truth at a time." But the story didn't end there. While they were gone, something else happened. A young girl named Han, Tukai's dearest neighbor, had vanished. The villagers were in a frenzy. No one had seen the girl since late afternoon. A woman in heels was seen boarding a van near the south end of the village. "They took her," a boy said, trembling. "They said she'd have a better life in the city." Tukai felt her knees give out. "No," she whispered. "It's happening again." They didn't wait for morning. The entire village mobilized, led by Jack and 2 Kentucky. On motorbikes, they searched every trail, every bend in the road. Near the old train station, they found the van. Locked. Engine cold. Inside, Han tied at the wrists, her mouth gagged. Tukai yanked the door open with shaking hands. Jack held the driver at bay until police arrived. The woman from before? She wasn't a sister. She was part of the same trafficking ring that once held Tukai captive. A recruiter who pretended to be family. Her father had used fake papers to legitimize their hold on children. "This girl," she hissed when caught, "was valuable. You stole her from us." That night, Tukai sat at her desk and began to write a letter. Not to the police, not to her lost father, but to her future child. "My daughter, if you ever read these words, I want you to know. I was once a girl without a name. I was abandoned, deceived, almost sold. Then I was rescued, and I chose love over blood, truth over silence. I met a man who looked into my eyes and didn't ask where I came from. He only asked where I wanted to go. I wrote my own name. I built my own life. You are not born from perfection. You are born from a history I've made peace with. And that is how you will inherit strength." She folded the letter, sealed it, and placed it in the same wooden box that once held her old identity. Then she stepped out into the soft rain. Jack was waiting by the garden, sleeves rolled, hammer in hand. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes," she smiled. "Let's keep building." The morning came soft and silver. Mist curled around the footpaths, soaking the bamboo leaves and clinging to the rice paddies. Lai Tukai was watering the garden when Jack approached, holding a weathered piece of paper. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low and serious. She looked up. "What is it?" He handed her the document. It was old, stained, yellowed, but the words were clear. It was a detainment record. His name was at the top. 3 years ago, he had been briefly imprisoned. Not for crime, but for intervening in one. He had stopped a brutal assault at a factory and been blamed when no other witnesses spoke up. Fired. Blacklisted. Disgraced. He returned to the countryside with nothing but shame and silence. "You went to jail," she whispered. "For defending someone," Jack replied. "But I lost everything anyway. I never told you because I thought if you knew, you might not choose me." She said nothing, just stared into the distance, the paper fluttering in her fingers. That night, Tukai didn't sleep. She sat at the threshold of the house, staring out into the dark. Jack remained by the old lychee tree until dawn, unmoving like a man awaiting sentence. But what hurt her most wasn't his past. It was the fact he hadn't trusted her enough to tell her sooner. The next morning, she was gone. No note. No message. Just a worn pair of shoes missing and the wool sweater he once knit for her no longer hanging by the door. 3 days passed. The village was in uproar. Jack searched frantically through markets, bus stations, alleys. Finally, a motel keeper outside the district recalled a girl like her asking for directions to Thatch Sun Mountain. The sight of an old, abandoned orphanage. Jack understood at once. She wasn't running from him. She was trying to find something for him. He found her among the ruins, sitting alone beneath a crumbling wall, rain dampening her sweater. Her face was calm, but her eyes were swollen. "I'm not angry that you went to prison," she said, without turning to him. "I'm hurt that you didn't believe I'd still choose you after knowing." Jack knelt before her in the wet earth. "I was wrong, and I'll never keep anything from you again. Then I won't run again either." They returned to the village. But peace didn't last. Grandma Lien had collapsed while foraging for herbs. Her leg was badly broken. She was rushed to the hospital. Tukai stayed by her bedside day and night. In her weakest moment, the old woman squeezed Tukai's hand and whispered, "If I'm not here one day, don't be afraid. Live fully. Don't do what I did. Don't miss love just because you fear what others might say." She passed away 3 days later. The funeral was simple. The entire village came. They cried. They prayed. But Tukai did not weep. She sat still, holding the hand-stitched scarf her grandmother had left behind, and placed it gently in the grave with her, as if burying a part of her soul. After that, she went quiet. She stopped teaching. She didn't garden. She didn't cook. Jack didn't push. He fixed the bed. He planted yellow chrysanthemums by the grave. He swept the porch and lit incense, and waited. A week later, she finally spoke. "Have you ever lost someone?" Jack nodded. "Then you know how it feels, to still be breathing while your heart lies buried." He didn't reply, just held her hand. No words could fix that pain, but a hand held tightly could keep you from falling apart. A month passed. The village opened a new learning center. The elders nominated Tukai to be its first teacher. She hesitated but accepted. "I want to teach these children how to write their names," she told Jack. "Because once, someone helped me find mine. And when they learn to write it," Jack said, "they'll be writing the first sentence of their own story. Just like you did." One evening under a burnt orange sky, Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden ring. Simple. Hand-carved. Inside it bore an inscription. "If you're still here after everything, then this is where I begin." Tukai didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She simply held out her hand. The morning light crept slowly across the horizon, casting a golden hue over the ripening rice fields. In the stillness, the only sound was the soft clink of water being poured into a clay kettle. Tukai had just prepared breakfast when Jack came rushing in, dust and sweat streaking his shirt. "There's been an accident on the hill," he said, catching his breath. "A truck flipped, someone's trapped. I'm going to help. Stay here, okay?" Before she could respond, he was already gone. She stood frozen, the bowl of porridge in her hands trembling slightly. A knot twisted in her chest, fear instinctive and cold. The news came that afternoon. Jack had been seriously injured while pulling a child from the wreck. A beam from the truck's cargo had fallen on him, striking his shoulder and head. He had been rushed to the district hospital unconscious. When Tukai arrived, Jack lay motionless beneath white sheets, his skin pale, and 4 dripping slowly beside him. Monitors beeped a steady rhythm, but he didn't respond. She took his hand. It was cold. "Don't leave me like Grandma did," she whispered. "Don't be another person I love, who disappears." Leaning close, she murmured through her tears, "If you wake up, I'll propose first. I'll take your hand before you can offer it. Just come back to me." 3 days passed. Not a movement. Not a blink. only machines keeping time in place. On the fourth day, while Tu-Kai was changing the water in the flower vase, she heard the faintest voice. Water. It's a little cold. She turned around. Jack's eyes were open. She dropped the vase and threw herself onto the bed, clutching him like she might never let go. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You heard me. She laughed and cried at once. I said it. I proposed first. Jack, still groggy, smiled. Then I guess I'd better not say no. 6 weeks later, Jack was released from the hospital. His left arm was still stiff, but he could walk and work with his right hand. The village welcomed him home like a war hero. People brought gifts, bundles of eggs, homebrewed rice wine, medicinal roots, and hand-woven blankets. Tu-Kai quietly organized a small wedding ceremony in their yard. No white dress. No diamonds. Just 2 wild orchids tied with red string and a simple offering of 3 cups of wine to the sky, the earth, and the ancestors. She stood beside Jack and said softly, We don't promise forever. Just this. While we're alive, we won't let go of each other. But peace didn't last. 1 week later, a man in a sharp suit arrived in the village. Polite, well-spoken, eyes like measuring scales. He claimed to represent an ecotourism company and offered to buy land near the river to build a high-end resort. We'll bring jobs, roads, wealth, he said. Some villagers were tempted. The sum was tempting, enough to rebuild houses, buy motorcycles, send children to school. But Jack and Tu-Kai were wary. That land feeds us, Jack told the elders. We give it away, we give away everything. A meeting was held at the village house. Half the community leaned toward selling. The other half hesitated. An elderly woman stood up, voice trembling but clear. Years ago, someone else came promising to build a rice factory. After the ribbon cutting, all they left was dead fish in the river and broken promises. Jack rose. I've worked for people like him, he said calmly. They talk smooth. But when the land is gone and the water is poisoned, they'll be long gone with their money. Someone asked, Then what's your solution? Jack glanced at Tu-Kai, who nodded. We built something ourselves. A community tourism project. No land sales. Shared profits. I'll lead the first phase. 1 month later, the plan launched. Jack rebuilt the bamboo bridge. Tu-Kai created a traditional cooking class. Villagers offered homestays, guided nature walks, and classes on crafts and herbal remedies. The first guests arrived from Saigon, university students on a field trip. They stayed 3 days learning how to pound sticky rice, weave mats, and cook rice cakes over a wood fire. Before leaving, they left a note. Your village has more than delicious rice. It has a love story more beautiful than any fairy tale. 1,000-word expansion. A hidden past emerges. One afternoon, weeks after the tourism program began, Tu-Kai was cleaning an old wooden chest stored in Grandma Lee's room. Inside, beneath yellowed letters and faded photographs, she found a sealed envelope addressed to her. The handwriting was delicate, unmistakably Grandma's. To my dearest Tu-Kai, if you are reading this, it means I'm no longer beside you. But I want you to know that you were never just a guest in this house. You were the daughter I prayed for. I once lost a child of my own your age, a little girl named Mai. She vanished during a flood when our home collapsed. They never found her body, and after that, I never had the strength to become a mother again, until you arrived. You didn't bring back Mai, but you brought back something I thought I had lost forever. The will to care, to protect, to love without fear. That is why I gave you my daughter's blanket. Why I taught you how to stir medicine just like I did with her. You were not my blood, but you were always my child. Tu-Kai sat in silence, tears staining the letter. All this time she had believed she was the one who had been saved. But the truth was they had saved each other. That evening she walked to Grandma's grave with incense and flowers. I'm not lost anymore, she said. I'm home. Behind her, Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. In his other hand was a thin notebook. I found something too, he said. From my father. She opened it. Inside were drawings of the house Jack built, the garden she planted, the bridge they rebuilt. He never said it in words, Jack said. But this was his way of telling me he was proud of me. They stood side by side in the fading light, two people who had buried their pasts but chosen to build something living in its place. The early autumn rain poured down without warning. Wind swept through the banana groves behind the house, bending their broad leaves into arcs of green sorrow. Inside, Jack was warming up a pot of soup. Tukai brought out bowls, moving slower now. Her belly, nearly 5 months round, shifted with every step. "Sit down, let me handle this," Jack said, gently taking the bowl from her. "I need to practice serving and delivering before the baby comes," she teased, her smile soft. The phone rang. Jack picked it up. The voice on the other end was strained, trembling. "Your mother. She's in the hospital." The trip back to the city wasn't optional. Jack hadn't seen his mother in years, not since they parted bitterly after a series of arguments. But now she was lying in a hospital bed, eyes closed, body limp. She'd had a stroke. The left side of her body was paralyzed. Jack sat at her bedside, unmoving for hours. "Mom, it's me. Jack. Can you hear me?" No reply. The doctor told him she'd need long-term care. And he was the only family she had left. Tukai greeted him at the village gate 2 days later. But when she saw his face, she knew this was a different Jack. A man carrying not just worry but guilt and conflict. "The doctor says she needs someone with her full-time," he said flatly. "You're thinking of?" "I'm thinking of bringing her here." The village buzzed with speculation. Some worried the small house, rustic and under-equipped, wasn't suitable for an invalid. Others murmured about how hard it might be on Tukai, already pregnant. She remained silent. That night, over dinner, she finally spoke. "If I were your mother, I'd want my son near me too." Jack looked up surprised. "But if she wakes up, will she accept me?" Tukai asked quietly, the first time she'd voiced that fear aloud. Jack reached for her hand. "She might not. But I won't leave. Because she gave me life. And you're the one I chose to live it with." 2 weeks later, Jack's mother came to the village. Rain fell gently as they wheeled her into the house. Tukai greeted her with warm ginger tea and a thick quilt. As Jack and a neighbor gently lifted her onto the bed, her eyes fluttered open. She looked around. Her gaze met Tukai's, then turned away. Tukai didn't flinch. "I'm Jack's wife," she said softly. "You don't have to see me as family. But please let me help." Life with a silent mother-in-law was a quiet test. Every morning Jack cleaned and fed her. Tukai boiled herbs, steamed towels, read her bits of the newspaper. The old woman never spoke, never looked her way, never thanked her. But Tukai didn't take offense. She had once been a child looked at with suspicion. She knew what that felt like. Then one afternoon the fever came. Jack was out helping repair the community center. Tukai was alone with his mother. The old woman trembled with heat. Tukai panicked, placing cool cloths on her forehead, adjusting her pillows, whispering prayers under her breath. Please don't scare me like this." A hoarse whisper broke through the silence. "Why? Do you call me mother?" Tukai froze, then knelt beside the bed, tears welling. "Because I believe if you care for someone, if you stay and hold on, then you become family." The old woman didn't reply. But the next time Tukai brought her soup, she didn't turn away. A month later, she moved her right hand. Just a twitch of a finger, but Jack wept. Tukai smiled quietly and said, "Mom, today I made your favorite dish." The old woman didn't smile, but she met her eyes. And that for Tukai was a beginning. The story ends in a new kind of peace. Not a fairy tale, but something deeper. That evening, in the dim glow of the oil lamp, Tukai folded laundry beside her mother-in-law's bed. Jack came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her gently. "Thank you," he murmured. "You did this for me," she whispered, looking out toward the garden. Outside, the crescent moon curved across the sky. And in that place, in that small weathered home, a family had been stitched together by patience, care, and love. The late-season wind whistled through the window slats, bringing with it the scent of dry straw and damp soil. The sky wasn't blue, but it wasn't gray either, as if the world had paused, waiting to witness something quietly significant. Kai was mending the back of Jack's old shirt. The fabric had thinned over time, worn by seasons of labor and sun. In their little home, the simplest things had always held them together. Outside, Jack was tending the gourd trellis. His shoulder still ached when the weather changed, but he never complained. Maybe because pain to him was a reminder that he had lived, that he had survived. A letter arrived. No return address. Inside was an old photo. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, holding a paper pinwheel in front of a thatched house. Behind her, a man, his face half-shadowed but familiar. Kai had seen him once. In a dream. "I had a father," she whispered. Jack watched her. "Do you want to find him?" "No," she said. "I want to know him, not to leave but to stay." But fate has its own rhythm. The next day the man came. His name was Dewey. Gaunt. Weathered. Carrying a frayed cloth bag. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't demand to be heard. He just stood outside the gate and said, "I'm Kai's father." The village buzzed. Even Jack's mother, now able to walk slowly again, came to the door and observed in silence. No judgment. No surprise. Just quiet. Kai didn't cry. She sat down across from him. "I always believed I'd been abandoned. And I always believed you were dead," he said. They sat there, words suspended between them. "I don't blame you," she said finally. "But I can't call you father. Not today." He nodded, and then pulled from his bag a bundle of letters, yellowed and soft. "I wrote to you every month," he said. "Never mailed them. But I wrote." That night she read every letter. There were no grand declarations. Just small details. How the moon had looked that night. How he'd passed a girl who looked like her and had to sit on a fruit stall for hours to catch his breath. By the 17th letter she was in tears. "I forgive you," she whispered. "But I'm staying. I already have someone who never promised me the world, but never let go of my hand either." Jack stood nearby. He didn't ask if she would go. He didn't question her tears. He just held her hand. And in that silence, he gave her the clearest answer of all. The next morning she prepared an offering. She placed the final letter on the altar, then bowed her head. "I had to go very far," she whispered, "to return to where I truly belong." That evening they had dinner with 4 at the table. Jack. To Kentucky. Her father. Jack's mother. There was no laughter. No loud conversation. But the silence wasn't hollow. It was full. Like a table finally balanced. 1 week later, Kai took her father for a walk along the river. He was slower now, knees stiff, breath short. But his eyes had softened. "Do you regret not searching harder?" she asked. "I regret many things," he said. "But what I found here, you alive, safe, loved, it gave me a peace I didn't know I needed." They sat beneath the old banyan tree. He took out a final item from his bag. A wooden comb, cracked but polished smooth. "Your mother made this. She told me once, if we ever lose her, we must keep something beautiful behind." Kai took the comb. "You did." Back home, Jack's mother sat with a piece of fabric in her lap, stitching a baby blanket. Kai approached and knelt beside her. "He didn't come to take me," she said. "He just wanted to see that I was okay." The old woman nodded. "Sometimes that's all we need, to know someone made it, even if it wasn't with us." Then, after a pause, "Would you like to finish the blanket together?" Kai smiled through her tears. "Yes, I would." Later that night, Jack lit a lantern and sat outside, carving names into a smooth plank of wood, 1 name on each side. Lie to Kentucky Ngwen Dewey, Fan Lien, his mother, and 1 tiny name yet to be born. Kai sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I never knew a house could hold so many stories." Jack kissed her temple. "Let's build more." A gust of wind blew through the windows again, not cold but fresh. The camera pulls away from the small home. Inside, light glows golden. 4 people sit around a low table. A 5th heart beats quietly in Kai's belly. No more searching. No more running. Just breath. Just presence. Just home.
Right to be so full of vitality and joy after such a short time. She described it, her travels around the world with sparkling eyes, and her plans for the next year with a joyful smile. What a contrast to how I was. Phyllis had been so open with me. I felt encouraged her to ask her, did you ever feel like you were just waiting to die? I don't mean to I don't mean to die. I just mean feeling like all you were doing was going through the motions with no filter and no purpose. Um, she emphatically stated, no, no, never. I must have looked incredulous because she shared the following story. When she was a little girl, her family lived in Java, where her dad was an executive with Shell Oil. One day, Japanese soldiers came to the door and took her dad away with a bayonet pointed at his back.